Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm here to talk about how Indigenous food practices has changed over time and its influence on the cuisine in Australia. First, I'll talk about the geographical location of my people, and then I'll introduce a brief historical context, followed by a discussion on the culinary practice, the European colonisation, the changes in food consumption over time, and Indigenous cuisine in Australia today. Aborigines historically lived on mainland Australia, Tasmania, and other offshore islands. On the other hand, Torres Strait Islanders came from the islands of the Torres Strait between the tip of Cape York and Papua New Guinea. The term Indigenous refer to both these groups. Aboriginals lived a healthy lifestyle, thriving off seasonal animals and plant foods, but this changed when the Europeans arrived in the late 1700s. Plant foods formed the bulk of the diet. This included fruits, nuts, seeds, and yams. Insects such as witchetty grubs and ants, as well as reptiles, fish, and other land animals also formed part of the diet. Bush tucker varies depending on region. North Queensland and the Kimberleys has tropical trees bearing fruits and seeds, whereas Central Australia has desert yams, seeds of grasses, and bush tomatoes. And South Australia, they have an abundance of root crops. A number of food preparation and cooking methods were used. Fire stick farming was a way to promote crop growth by burning land. To cook, earth ovens were used for steaming and cooking for large numbers. Hot coals cooked the flesh of meat and fish, and baking ashes was a way of cooking witchetty grubs and involved briefly rolling them in the hot ash. Some more recent techniques include boiling and barbecuing. Aborigines had learnt to boil using billy cans and aluminium pots wherever these were available, and it was here where they realised that metal, glass and ceramics were a lot easier to work with. The dreaming was an important way of passing down knowledge, cultural values and beliefs, and a totem was an object in nature that represents a connection to the spiritual world of the dreaming. To eat a totem, if they were an animal, would be deemed a taboo in some tribes. Initially, the Europeans and Indigenous Australians shared a civil relationship based on trade, but hostility arose when Aborigines realised that the way of life was becoming increasingly disrupted by their presence. Grazing animals that the Europeans brought over competed with local animals for survival and dug up the soil. Here you can see just how rapidly the livestock bred in the period of 1820 to 1891. It's sad to say that soon after, Aboriginal diets were replaced with rations, including sugar, tea, flour, jam and meat. By the 1980s, traditional foods consisted no more than 20% of the diet. Fish, shellfish and macadamia nuts were the few native items that the Europeans continued to cultivate, and now native crops are being commercially developed, and Australia is still the largest importer of macadamia nuts. Here it shows that a huge 63% of overall macadamia nut production is for the overseas market. For quandongs, production has decreased from its peak in 2000, and sources from natural trees has also decreased, with more being harvested from commercial plantations. Aboriginal diets were nutrient-rich, low in saturated fats, and high in levels of lean protein and complex carbohydrates. The most notable change is probably the replacement with energy-dense and less nutritious foods. Consumption of bugs and vegetables from bush foods was also decreased due to the adoption of the European diet. This can be explained by the fact that, on average, 41% of total daily energy comes from discretionary foods, and Indigenous Australians consume 15 grams more free sugars than non-Indigenous people. Median alcohol intake for Indigenous Australians is also double than non-Indigenous counterparts. Food security is the main reason for this. It's suggested that replacing traditional foods with market foods is associated with high economic burden. In 2013, 22% of Indigenous Australians have lived in a household that had run out of food and couldn't afford to buy any more. As bush tucker is now being discovered and rediscovered by people, tourism and the establishment of boutique cuisines have increased interest in entomophagy. Restaurants are now embracing emu, crocodile, yabbies and eels, and flavouring dishes with bush tucker spices. Many producers in Australia are also supporting the commercial development of native crops. Bush tucker is gaining exposure in society through its presence on recipe websites, and here you can see the incorporation of bush tucker ingredients to a westernised dish. Otherwise, restaurants like Charcoal Lane, Tucker and Purple Goanna provide a wonderful platform to showcase all the flavours that Indigenous cuisine has to offer. It is a combination of unique flavours. I hope you've gained a deeper understanding on how Aboriginal diets have changed and have opened your eyes to the growth of Indigenous-inspired dishes in Australia today.
created using Powtoon.